Perhaps you're involved in organising these camps that are all about helping people to develop themselves, develop the resilience and the positivity. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you bring mental toughness into it?
Yeah, so I work for John F. Kennedy School of Sports Psychology at National University, and we have a real comprehensive internship program. So these are students who are trying to seek graduate degrees in sports psychology, become certified mental performance coaches. And in order to do that, you have to meet a certain threshold, a certain criteria of a number of hours of working with athletes or performers. And so we have 4 internship experiences that each student needs to go through. The first one is a summer camp. So we have students from all around the United States. It used to be the world, now the United States, as we're transitioning. And for 2.5 weeks, they showed up in the Bay Area. And we'd have, anywhere from 2 groups of 10 to 12 to, 3 or 4 groups, depending on how many students we had at that time. And they would go out and work with youths around the Bay Area. So it could be, like, let's say one group's working with a cheerleading camp for 1 week, and then the next week they're working with a baseball camp. And then the other group's working with, like skate like a girl, and then a leadership camp. And another one is working with at-risk youth, in a facility, and then working with a golf organization or soccer organization. So what they're doing is they are, well, I use a 4C model. So if I have 10 students, I break them up into 5 groups of 2. And each group is in charge of a different C. So the first day might be mental toughness. What's the definition? What is it? Why should we care? What is sports psychology? That type of information. And the second day would be one of the 4 C's, and we just run it all the way down the week. And this way, they are learning how to do the research, understand the concept, digest the information, use it in an applied way, and build a full program. So with complete days. So it might be an introduction, like 5 minutes of just shooting shit and getting to talk to the kids and warming them up. It might be an icebreaker. Then it might be a small 5 to 15 minute presentation, a small group activity, another 5 to 10 15-minute presentation, large group. We're doing a lot of activities and running and integration of these concepts in an athletic endeavor. And then at the end of the day, doing some debriefs and breaking out into small groups. And so they're cobbling together, the 4 C's in a systematic way and delivering it to athletes in an applied manner. And they not only learn a lot, but they have a hell of a lot of fun too, and they're helping these kids.
That sounds fantastic. I'd certainly love to kind of keep track on those developments. There's something else. Just kind of doing my research on you there. Popped up was the Mission 60 stuff. I thought that looked really interesting. This kind of notion of deliberate discomfort. What's your work there?
Yeah, so I'm the mental skills director for Mission 60, and it's a really unique company, organization, performance consulting business. It basically takes former special forces operators from all branches, pairs them with social scientists, behavioral scientists, industrial organizational psychologists or performance psychologists, and we team up and we work with professional organizations in sports. We work with just businesses, Fortune 500, and just your everyday mom and pop shop that's trying to make it and wants to hone their skill set. And we have a whole curriculum designed around the special forces mentality, some of the things that they have learned on the battlefield that they have tested through training, and then coupled with like the science and the research of human excellence. So it's pretty formidable way of bringing like those people that have lived in some of the harshest conditions, that have dealt with bullets flying past them, people trying to end them, and having to pull on some really toughness skills in the moment, because you're running towards the fight. You're getting that flight taken away from you. You're not fleeing, but you have to run towards. So what are you going to do to moderate yourself and get the best in that type of stressful situation? And then we have the science part as well. So it's a nice blend. It's a nice combination. What we do a lot of times is we have the special forces operators. They have the sexy stories, of being in combat, of being in a VUCA, type of environment or atmosphere, and then we come up and support them with some of the latest research or some of the stuff from the applied field.
And because that's that kind of transition between research and practice is one that I'm always particularly interested in, because I think across psychology generally, and actually across a lot of allied professions as well, I'd say that it's something we don't do particularly well. My take on it is that people tend to be incredibly complicated, and then theoretical models have to be a simplification of the reality, and then what we see in applied becomes a simplification sometimes of that again, and it's quite easy then to drift. And I don't necessarily think it's one side or the other that's to blame, but how do you find kind of trying to marry up those two, which you certainly do in your professions, we'll call it, to what extent with mental toughness do you find you're able to kind of link research and practice?
Yeah, so I believe strongly in the science practitioner model. So using science and research to guide and direct the work that I do, and because I subscribe to that, I am constantly scouring the literature, the research, to try to make sense of new findings, and then be able to translate that in a simple way to my audience so that they can digest it, understand it, and then do something with these concepts. Like, how do they weaponize, or how do they make these concepts action oriented? How do they live them? And that's not always easy, because models and theories out there, it takes time to be able to truly grasp them. There's so much research, so much information, a flooding of different orientations, that is, and it's hard to know, which one is correct, which one is most true, which one has some strong backing behind it. So it can get very confusing and nebulous, trying to really come to a good understanding of what these concepts and ideas and models are, and then how to translate them so that people can use them in a real way. I hold on to a lot of different models, a lot of theoretical approaches that I subscribe to. And it's just something that really interests me. So I think that allows me to be very flexible, to meet people where they are, and not to jam something down, a consultee's throat, is to really pull their understanding of how they conceptualize performance. So what I try to do, like, let's say the 4C model, is you can go the education route, where you can be fire and brimstone, and this is what mental toughness is. But sometimes they're just not ready for it, or they'll reject it, or they have a different idea of an understanding of mental toughness. So I try to get the both of best worlds, some education, but also get a good understanding of what is your idea of performing at your best. What is mental toughness to you? So I have them actually, like my clients, when my students develop their own model, and then also layer in and pump in over time, a lot of like the 4C information, or information from other areas. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that kind of idea of you have to meet people where they are. Right. I think that's a great way of expressing it. And I think sometimes that's where that sort of theoretical model into practice bit can collapse. It's kind of like, look, here's where the theory's at, and it's up to you to come to us. And I think really that's the important skill that the scientist practitioner has, where you have to be able to kind of park any I suppose any of your own defensiveness over the way that people might term something, or as long as you can kind of understand what their point, what their intention is behind it. Let's not get too bogged down in the words that they use, or perhaps some of the examples that they give.
Yeah, this is also why I think it's necessary to when you're creating a team, is to bring someone with a research background. This is something, when I worked with the military in 2006, and there was only 3 of us in the military. I think now there's hundreds of mental performance coaches. That was, I kept going to the, to my bosses, to the administration, saying, one of the first people we really need to bring on is a researcher to legitimize what we're doing, to make sure that we have this open dialogue and communication. So it's not just what my mentor used to say, California hot tubbing. Like, there's some real meat behind it. There's some structure. There's a framework. And it's just not us bringing in what we believe mental toughness is based on our experience, or what what our audience wants, but some real tied true research structuring behind it.
Well, that's very important from our perspective, because my background is, for 50 years I was in people development, in human resource development, and when I started, when I look back, I cringe at some of the concepts I would play with, that I would introduce to people. They were largely faith-based, or somebody had dreamt them up on. In Britain, we talk about on the back of a cigarette packet. Mm-hmm. And I can remember one of the most popular leadership models here. I mean, hugely popular. It was just, everybody was practicing it. And I met the originator of it, and he said, "Oh no, there's no evidence for it." I just stood there one day and thought this made sense to me. And to be fair, some of it still makes sense. I mean, we have kind of tested some bits of it out, but I find that people development, there's so much money spent on people development and organizational development, and we're still using half-baked ideas. And we're still using ideas that are 50 or 60 years old. And my response to people when they tell me this or challenge me, I said, well, what were you driving 50 years ago? I think the most popular car in the world was a Ford Popular. What's you driving now? Would you like to go back and drive that car? Well, why are you using that technology, that people technology? And that sort of brings me to another question. You're obviously very interested in the research and the ideas that are contributing to our understanding of mental toughness. Have you any ideas about where you think it's going to go next, where the next breakthroughs are? We'd like to think we're involved in that, but I'd like to hear your views.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of reading of the research, even some of the articles by Doug, like 2002, kind of in the beginning. Kind of my understanding of the evolution of the 4C model was that there was there's high reliability, high validity. There's some double-blind tests, some solid research, and the development of a questionnaire, the MTQ 48, I think. Based off of that, able to suss out, these four characteristics of mental toughness: control, challenge, commitment, and confidence. And then that was the model, I think, for quite a few years. And then through the research and through trying it on and through, interacting with clients and businesses and whatnot, and getting a better understanding, letting it evolve organically and naturally, and then through science and research that, it's taken place, there's starting to be, it's like a fuller picture now, right? So there's, I'm trying to think of the model that I've seen recently where, there's some connection and tying to or tethering to grit and to resilience and to and then there's, if you go north, that equals something. If you go or vertical, horizontal, it might be resilience, this plus that equals resilience. So you have the assessment tools, you have the model. I've seen over the years the development of what are the techniques that build the skill that lead to the competencies, which lead to mental toughness, and how much do you possess. So I think that the next steps are probably more technology based training and teaching, online platforms, which I think you guys might have. And then the other thing is, there a lot of the techniques to me so far are cognitively based, and I don't see a whole lot of mindfulness based type of techniques. So I can see maybe bringing some of those types of strategies in, and baking them a little bit more into the model. And then I don't know, maybe the model evolves. Maybe it's 5C model. Maybe courage is in there, or values get baked in or built in. So it's really been, not that I started in 2002 with the 4C model, but I've done enough reading and research where I've kind of think I've seen all these pieces over time being put into place, and it's been really fun and exciting to see the evolution of the 4C model.
Thank you for that. I mean, that's very consistent with the way we see things. So the evolution, I mean, John has been a big player in this. The evolution of the 8-factor version of the 4Cs model has been really important, because it's created a level of granularity in the model that has it's created a kind of lens through which we can look at a lot of things. So you're right, we can look at ideas like grit and mindset and learned optimism, and we can see that they are actually components of something, and very reassuringly they fit into what we do. It's like what we've got seems to overarch all of this, so we're quite pleased about the way it's developed. I don't think we will be doing much more work on trying to develop the model further. I think what we've learned from the first iteration is you have to let what you've got run and wait for the questions and find which questions you can't answer satisfactorily, because that then will inform you where you're going. But I completely agree about development. I think, again, the development side of mental toughness has not moved for 20 or 30 years and is very poorly evidenced. And there is some interesting work that you can do with the concept, because there's a colleague at Queen's University Belfast who's looked at the 8 factors, and he's posited that maybe a particular technique will work if you are a particular type of mentally tough or mentally sensitive individual. Maybe a profile is important in terms of which techniques work. And we're only at the starting point for that sort of work. But if it's going to be valuable, I think that's the direction we've got to go in. I don't know what you say, John.
Real quick, that's one of the things that I've appreciated with, I call you guys the 4C crew. Because it seems like the philosophy, and the motto, and the mission behind what you guys are doing is that you create this sense of openness and this sense of wanting to learn and wanting to listen and being inclusive. And, there are a lot of models out there that, for whatever reason, don't, I'm mental toughness. There has nothing to do with resilience. It has nothing to do with hardiness. It has nothing to do with inner orientation, but you guys and gals really look to include some of these concepts that are really out there. Self-efficacy. I pulled it up. Self-efficacy and engagement and resilience and positivity, goals and whatnot. And you're figuring out how do these interconnect and how do they influence each other. And how to nest them together. Like there's a place for all of it. It's just about truly understanding the dynamics and the interaction and the interplay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's certainly something that we try and do as a crew. If I've seen further, it's by standing on the shoulder of giants and so on. Right. And certainly you're so right to have picked up the development side of things. This is partly, without getting too, I suppose, boring for people that are not interested in academic structures, but the way that a lot of peer review is designed and the way that academic research is judged, in my view, not necessarily correctly, means that a lot of applied work is difficult to publish in journals that are valued by universities, which I think is a big issue when it comes to applied work across the whole of psychology, not just related to mental toughness. But I'll not get on that soapbox and go down that rant right now. But yeah, there's certainly cases where we need a little bit more, and it's because there is no one size fits all. So I think with the different profiles, so the MTQ Plus can create over 40,000 different profiles because people are vastly different. There are not 16 different types of people in the world. There's even 40,000 is a simplification of the reality, but what's going to work for one person is not going to work for the next. And again, that becomes really challenging in research then. And one of the other things we come across from a development point of view, we rely a lot on practitioners and practitioner feedback because having a foot in both camps, Michael, you'll be well aware of the speed at which academic cogs turn compared to the speed at which the real world turns are vastly, vastly different. So in that sense, we get some really fascinating questions that come from practitioners, and we go, right, that's a great idea for some research. I'll tell you the answer in 4 years, because that's the speed at which, by the time you've got ethical approval and funding in place and data collection and then peer review processes and things like that happens. So I'd like to think that from a research point of view, with lots of good stuff to come in those slowly moving cogs. But we're also always looking for practitioners to come back to us with, here's what I would really like to know, and be guided like that, rather than this sort of, sense that we might sit in an ivory tower as the keepers of the knowledge.
Michael, I've got my final question to you. You mentioned that the special ops guys could come along with their sexy stories about their experiences. When you talk about mental toughness, what's your sexy story?
Oh man. Let's see. I play college baseball. It was NAIA. It was like not Division I, not the elite of college, but I had a full ride scholarship to play some baseball. And I wasn't the talented. I was undersized till I was like a senior in high school. So I used mental toughness on the daily to really elevate my level of play. And so much so that I was able to, to a lot of people's surprise, get a scholarship, get my college paid for, and apply a lot of these mental performance tactics to my everyday play. And as a result, I was an All-American. I broke a ton of records at the college level, team level, and just played some, phenomenal baseball my junior and senior year, but also got to travel to other countries as well, Japan and Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. Played baseball for the Slovak national team, coached the Slovak national team, played in Budapest. But I can attribute that elevation of my performance to mental skills. Meditating every day for me, that was a thing. The positive self-talk, the thought-stopping skills, the imagery, the setting the goals. I used it all, and I was really able to, push myself, through what I was practicing to get to a level and type of play that I didn't even know was possible. And like I said, it wasn't the major leagues, but I played in a very competitive league, and I was one of the top players in that, competitive league. So for me, the mastery was really important. How do I master myself? How do I get out of my own way to be able to, play the best possible baseball I can consistently every single day, rain or shine? 5 fans or a couple hundred fans, Monday or Sunday, doubleheader or just one game. Girlfriend in the stand or no girlfriend in the stands, parents in the stand, no parents in the stand. It didn't matter, the environment that I was in. It was my own internal environment that I was able to create and sustain and push me to new heights.
Brilliant. I can hear the passion in your voice. It's brilliant.
No, I miss some days.
Hey, traveling the world, playing and coaching baseball, that'll pass as a sexy story.
Michael, it's been great speaking with you. It's fantastic, and I think your sexy story at the end is really summing it up. It's you talk about living the mental toughness story. It is about taking who you are and optimizing who you are. And it isn't necessarily about being a gold medalist. It's about being successful. And we talk about thriving. We don't talk about happiness. We talk about contentment. The idea that you could do more, you could achieve more, but you're achieving as much as you can, and you're on that journey through life. And who knows, you might achieve a bit more tomorrow. It's a great illustration, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for having me. It's been fun, and hopefully we can continue this relationship. And if you need, you have those questions when it comes to people in the field using the 4C model. Like I said, I've been using it with my campers, my interns, my students at the graduate level for 4 years, and we've been finding out just a lot of different ways to be able to try to develop the 4 C's so that people have more control over, the external.
Fantastic.